Good afternoon. I can't imagine a more interesting and relevant panel to be chairing this afternoon. We're going to be talking about unlocking scalable impact with Agentic AI. That has for me all of the key kind of buzzwords that we're focusing on at the moment in the world of AI. Now I have to admit I'm a little bit biased on this topic, having just written a book on exactly this subject, governing the machine, how to navigate the risks of AI and unlock its true potential. We're going to hear from our panel this afternoon about the practicalities of how you can use Agentic AI without it going wrong and in a way that can have real scalable impact for the business. And I have to say, having been talking with the panelists over the last hour and in our preparation calls before this, there really are some fantastic practical examples that they've got of where they're doing this. I'm joined on stage by Fergal Reid, the Chief AI Officer at Intercom, Ellen Svanstrom, who is Chief Data and Information Officer at H&M, Ramana Tumu, who is Chief Technology Officer for Expedia, and Niels van der Kamp, the AI lead for SAP in the Netherlands. So we thought we ought to kick off by just kind of clarifying what we as a panel at least see as Agentic AI. And Ramana, maybe you could just give us a quick definition of what we're talking about here.
Yeah, that's a really good place to start. To me, when I think about Agentic AI, it's more about moving from getting assistance and help to like really acting and working on your behalf with the right context, accountability, and most importantly, autonomy. But while doing all of this, it's extremely important to keep the human in the loop. I'll give you an example. Imagine I'm traveling to this trip. I want to book a hotel on Expedia, and I have a query that says, book me the best hotel in Amsterdam. Imagine there is the context behind it, and like really provide that context. Why am I traveling here? I'm coming on a business trip. I provide my budget constraints. I provide all the preferences. Like once agent has access to all of that, and me still being in the loop, it goes and does the whole end-to-end thing. And the key is like me being in the loop. To me, that's like truly agentic AI. So that's like the way to think about it's not like really a feature, it's a real shift.
Brilliant, thank you. I think it'd be good to get some additional examples in your different businesses for how you're thinking about using Agentic AI. Fergal, would you like to give us one from your experience?
Hi everyone, so my name's Fergal and I work for Intercom. We make a product called Finn, which is a customer support agent. And initially we started out kind of answering people's informational customer support queries, and really in the last year people are using the product to do kind of more and more agentic tasks. And so an example of that might be we have a customer who sells greeting cards, and sometimes someone comes along and asks for a refund, and now we have a system in production where it's like, well actually to get a refund you need to upload a picture, a photograph of your damaged delivery that you've gotten. Someone can upload this, Finn, our agent, will sort of look at it and go, yeah, there is damage in that photo, and will then consult the refund policy and then decide autonomously whether to issue the refund or not. And that's actually an example running with no human in the loop. And this stuff gets most interesting and most powerful and most risky, as I think we'll talk about later, when there is no human in the loop. So that's one example. We have loads of customers now starting to do, in that sort of customer service context, starting to do more and more complex, more and more agentic things. And it's risky. You have to integrate with APIs, and there's potential to do damaging actions and all this good stuff that I think we'll get into. But we're seeing real value being delivered as well.
Fantastic. I mean, that's a clear example where you can see a big time saving from what would have been a manual process previously.
Absolutely, time saving for the business, also for the end user, and reduces stress, because it's like, yeah, you get a really quick response, you wait a minute. It's not like seconds because you need to go consult a whole bunch of external systems, but it's like take a minute where it used to take you an hour. It's good. It's a good thing.
Yeah, fantastic. Ellen, where are you thinking about using Agentic?
Well, in general, I think it is an immense opportunity for our type of business, as we have such a complex value chain and a lot of repetitive tasks that can be automated. We went in early on AI around things like price optimization and allocation, and then moved into the Gen AI of actually building capabilities for customer service and the likes. We've learned a lot from those two phases of actually preparing and building the foundation. So as we now look forward, we think about Agentic AI almost like a virtual colleague that never gets tired. It can work 24/7, but we still have to manage it as a very clear scope, access control, authorities and user authentications, etc. So we're currently now exploring. We are moving into this with a humble approach, wanting to be in control and also start with smaller use cases internally, and then see how we can move into not only individual use cases, but then also how they can connect throughout the value chain and then be more agents to agents. But this is a complex work that we need to be very much in control of. Going from advising to acting is another ballgame. So we are leaning into this with control and a phased approach.
Fantastic, thank you. And Romana, you already gave us sort of a bit of an outline of a possible example, but can you build on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. For us, like Ellen said, we have been using AI for the last decade plus at Expedia, mostly for pricing and search and recommendation type models. Moved on from there with generative AI, over the last 2-3 years, and then more recently, we actually forayed into Agentic AI in a pretty big way, I would say. So we have lots of internal use cases that we power today. Just to give you some context, we have about 6,000 employees monthly accessing our production AI environment, building agents, interacting with agents. We have 1,500 plus agents in the production environment. So we have taken a very thoughtful approach while we start small, but really speed things up. So lots of internal use cases around analysts going and asking lots of questions to the data and getting what they want. And there are people in HR teams, people in content management and marketing teams. You can see every single group in the company, they are interacting with the environment in some form. So that's internal. And we also have, I'm sure some of you have used agents deployed on across various brands, hotels.com and Expedia.com and Vrbo.com. So there are agents that our travelers can interact with. The most exciting thing we just announced, a couple of weeks, in the last week, 10 days, is integration with ChatGPT. You can pretty much go to ChatGPT and book directly from ChatGPT. So we did that more recently, in about a week ago. And we did the same thing with Perplexity, comment browser. So we are now foraying into much more, how do we do this? Externally, where external agents can talk to internal agents. So yeah, pretty exciting times.
I mean, that sounds great. I'm certainly going to give that a try because booking travel takes a lot of time, and any way that can save some time on that and still get the result that I'm looking for would be fantastic.
Going to get a lot more easier for sure.
Yeah, brilliant. Niels, I think you've got an example that takes a slightly different tack, but also was very interesting from what you were describing.
Yeah, for sure, Ray. I think looking at what we do as SAP, as a software supplier, of course, we are deploying agents, I would say, across our solutions that we provide. They are a little bit more generic in that sense because they need to adapt to a wide range of customers. So we have agents that increase efficiency of processes, of course, but what I really like is the agents that increase also the quality of service that they can provide as a company. So, and one of the domains where this can really happen, I would say, is in the supply chain. So let's say that you face a supply chain disruption. Some batch of products has come in which is faulty, and an agent can now, based on detecting that we have a faulty batch, looking at the stock that we currently have, identify that maybe in a few days from now we will be running out of stock and we need to scale down production. That's not what we want to do, of course. So this agent in the next steps will then guide you in basically sourcing an alternative product and looking at a wide variety of factors here. The stock that you need, the specific products that you need, but also the price range where you want to be in when you source these products. Maybe then the agent will look at the previous parties, the previous suppliers that you've used that source all these materials, that can supply these materials for you, and then based on that do a suggestion of an alternative provider for the specific parts. But in the end, you can keep up your production and you can keep up the supply to your end customers in the end. So these are the type of solutions that we are working on, just as an example, because we have multiple agents coming out over the coming months, I would say.
Great, thank you very much. We're going to move on to start talking about some of the challenges that you overcame, as working through these different things. But Niels, when we were talking before, you had quite a nice sort of framework that we were using to describe the process. Perhaps you could outline that, please.
I think process is the key word, or actually the starting point, or maybe one of the starting points, because actually when you do, there's a lot of AI technology, agentic AI technology out there, but when it becomes really powerful is when it's really attached to the business processes running in your enterprise organization. So the process producing data is actually a starting point, I would say, of data created that can be picked up by agentic AI later on. But it's not just about data in itself, it's about data in the context in which it was created. So there's a lot of metadata necessary for agents to really understand when it's faced with a specific challenge. Where do I start to look for the right data? And this is not something that we can just give away to an LLM. Please give me the tables, the technical data structure, the API endpoints that I need. So you need to have an extra layer here, and this is what we try to achieve with the SAP knowledge graph, which is basically a metadata structure tying together data objects in your enterprise in a functional way, so that when an agent actually needs a data object, it knows where to look for it, which tables, which API endpoints, etc. And that data, which you then have collected, obviously is being used by AI technology. And this is where generative AI models, large language model technology comes into play, and not just one. And we were talking about this during our prep as well, right? It's not just about choosing one technology provider, it's by being able to switch between, and easily switch between these providers. I think we've all seen how fast this technology is evolving. It's not just picking one model today, which we're going to stick with. Tomorrow we might either switch to a new version or might switch to a whole new provider, because it better suits our case to begin with. So that's about the cycle, and then in the end, the AI produces data that can be utilized in the process again to optimize the processes. So it's not a starting point, the process, it's basically the cycle where you process data AI. It's a flywheel.
That's great. And I suspect, Romana, that will resonate with you because you were talking before about pretty large scale use of agentic AI and AI in general. How have you approached that challenge of scale?
Actually, the process is a real key one, right? I'm glad you touched on that. To me, right from the beginning at Expedia, we approached this as as much as it's an AI scaling problem, it's actually a data challenge. It's also an engineering challenge. So we took a platform-centric approach to make sure, like you said, we need to have the ability to switch the models, any models that we want, for internal or external use cases. For example, in our production environment, we have access to 60 different LLMs that, for various agents and use cases, people can seamlessly switch. So that's the kind of way you approach scale, for example, having the breadth and making sure you approach that as an engineering and data product. That's number one. Number two, it's also like a much more cleaner APIs and making sure you have trusted, unified data sets and have a really good observability around it, because that's how you can actually scale, knowing you have the trust embedded in the platform. Right? That's like really essential. And third, as you think about this more broadly, and not just for the internal use cases, like I said, at some point your agents may have to interact with external agents, and how do you architect your MCP servers for scale and making sure like you have all the right validation layers and observability signals, for your internal agents to talk to external agents seamlessly. So it's a bit of holistic engineering problem that cuts across core AI, data layer, and your technology layer. And we approach this as a core platform-centric, and the ecosystem.
That's great, thank you. There's a few points I'd love to come back on, but maybe later, but just one actually to pick up on. You mentioned 60 different models that people can choose from. I got the sense that not all of the people who are building agents are necessarily developers themselves. These may be business colleagues who are looking to, get help with a particular task, etc. How do they make that choice between the different models? What kind of assistance do you give them for figuring that out?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll give you a couple of examples. One, almost all our engineers across the company use coding assistants these days. And we give them the choice. Either you can use, for example, Microsoft Copilot, Cursor, or Cloud. And it's up to each individual engineer. We are doing POC on Cloud. It's up to each engineer to choose from based on the workload that they're responsible for. Same thing with we have agents we have LLMs that we expose from Databricks and AWS for different use cases. People may choose different models. Right? If I'm in legal, maybe I want to go experiment, doing a lot of research, maybe they go lean on a specific model like AWS Bedrock offers. So we want to create enough flexibility with the right governance around it. And that's the way to scale. And most importantly, continue to monitor to see how the usage and educate the people around the best practices, and be more iterative and see what things you need to swap out, what things you need to be considered.
Great, thank you. Ellen, I think one of the things that's been in the back of our minds, through these different examples that we've given, has been the question of governance and how we control and make sure the AI does what we want it to. And for me, that's the essence of kind of governance and responsibility. It's actually just making sure it delivers, right, and doesn't do many different things wrong that it could do. Can you take us through a little bit how you've approached that in H&M, thinking about that governance structure and process?
Sure, and I think there's two ways to actually address that. A little bit building on first what you're saying. It's maybe not the governance, but the steering of it all. If I call the enterprise architecture, structures, and the strategy that you apply in actually building both the platforms, then you need to control the choices, you need to make the data available, you need to control the data, moving into a very orchestrated, composable architecture, so you are able to modularize and choose, swap out, if you will, different modules and agents. We know that we are not going to be the best of developing agents ourselves, and maybe won't even move into that. When we were on the AI train, we did a lot of that ourselves. So going into the future, we want to tap into the external innovation, but want to be flexible and agile to do that. But in order to orchestrate that, you need to have very close structures on your enterprise architecture and the overall design. So that's one part of the overall, there's maybe more towards steering and being clear on the desired state and how you orchestrate it. But then to the real governance of AI and maybe controlling the risks, etc. We have obviously built up and learned over the years. So it's been very much driven out of our central AI analytics and data team in order to upskill ourselves. I think one proof point of maturity right now is that we're starting to integrate the AI governance processes into our general corporate governance processes. And it makes it easier for all of us because it's then more coherent and in the rhythm of the other governance structures and rhythm. But it also needs to be managed to make sure that we are moving with the times. And I think the EU AI Act, hard word to say, but has really helped us to identify and manage the risk, but also then structure on how we report. We believe that governance doesn't hinder innovation, it actually enables it because it gives you the freedom to perform within a set parameters, and that gives the colleagues and the company the ability to lean in with a better trust and feeling. So governance overall is immensely key, but I also think that we are reaching a much higher maturity.
That's something that I found that particularly interesting when we were discussing earlier, because we very often ask that question about, do you set up separate AI governance or do you somehow integrate it into existing governance structures? And obviously every company will differ. Some companies have very sophisticated compliance and governance structures, let's say banks, for example, or health companies, and others maybe less so. But I really liked your approach of saying, let's incubate separately because we can put a specialist team on it, we can really focus on what is needed from AI specifically, but then in order to roll it out across the company, let's try to integrate it into existing processes and controls, because then we don't duplicate and we make life easier for colleagues by doing it that way. So I thought that was very, very helpful. Thank you.
We're actually in the stage also of doing that in terms of our integrated business plans and how the business goes. Different business functions also build their plans, which is a bit of a maturity as well. So now it's really business driven in terms of both the opportunities, the use cases and the needs. And then we control for governance in terms of foundation and availability of models.
Virgil, I'm going to ask you to tackle one of those big kind of elephant in the room questions, which is reliability and accuracy, right? I mean, that's probably the biggest single challenge that I see in talking with companies. For using generative AI and with agentic AI, frankly, it's just going to be bigger. The stakes are higher and the risks are potentially larger. How do you think about making sure that the results are actually reliable?
Yeah, so I think it's an interesting question, and I probably diverge slightly from some of the other panelists along some of the axes here. Like, I guess to set up the stall initially, the first thing I would say is like, well, why are we using LLMs for agentic AI at all, right? Like, a lot of these things we could accomplish, we could have done 10 years ago with old school kind of API calling and so on. And I think like we often see people put customer support bots live where it's like, oh, you can accomplish this task by putting these 3 or 4 APIs together in a way that no one had time to code up. And now, like this agentic AI operating on behalf of the end user will tread through these 3 or 4 different APIs, using its intelligence and accomplishing something. And like that's magical and great and cool when that happens, and it saves everybody time, and it means a business process that just didn't exist is sort of fuzzily materialized into existence by the AI agent. And that's great. I mean, that's the big promise of what we're going towards. But then, as you say, that the problem with that is, well, that really needs to be accurate. It really needs to be reliable. And that is a major limiting factor of this technology. We find it pretty easy to get an LLM to do something that's agentic and complex and treads through 3 or 4 different APIs, like once, or to prototype standard. But trying to have it work 100 times out of 100 in production is a big deal. And where you notice a 1 in 100 error, where like it's a refund, or it's something like the food delivery completely goes missing, something like that happens, it's a big problem. And so, so we think a lot about reliability, and to achieve that, we quite carefully control the actual LLM that's used. So we don't allow our customers to choose between different LLMs. Instead, we have like one LLM that operates in a defined prompt envelope that we have really tuned and really tried to get reliable enough to do the task. And then we build this like tooling to help people do sort of like testing and verification that the prompts and the systems that they want to connect the LLM to are actually going to work and are going to do things reliably. So we're like, yeah, there's an amazing new piece of technology here, it can deliver a lot, but you have to really, really sweat how it's deployed and have maximum control over how it's deployed in order to like get that reliability high enough to actually be useful, to be trusted for production settings. So that's how we'd set out our stall. Now I would say that like it's improving very rapidly over time. A year and a half ago, 2 years ago, we started building Fin for informational queries. Hallucinations is this major issue, and we really have to be very careful to not have it hallucinate when answering questions. And like that's much less of an issue now. The tech has gotten much better. Not zero, but way less than it was 2 years ago. So hopefully, agentic tasks will go on a similar trajectory. We'll see.
And just, on that point, you said the tech has gotten a lot better since then. How much of that is coming from the underlying foundation model versus coming from tech that you have built onto it, around it, etc.?
It's a complicated question, and it really varies per product offering we have. Like our core informational Fin, which it's about $50 million of recurring revenues, we're doing a lot of customer support questions. It's gotten way, way better, and a lot of that has been the investments we've made, and a small amount of it has been the improvements in core LLMs. It's gotten cheaper to run, it's gotten faster. Other things though, like tasks, which is, like these agentic tasks, where it's really at the frontier of model capability. The actual model improvements are unlocking more and more ability very rapidly, even over 6 months. Recent models have gotten much better at agentic behavior, and they've gotten progressively more steerable as well. So I would say that the innovation of the models there is really having a big impact for agentic complex workflows. Other things, the IQ of the models kind of saturated the task a year and a half ago, and so it's about like cheaper, faster, slightly more predictable, but the frontier has not yet, the frontier for agentic stuff is not yet saturated the tasks. They have a long way to go, I think, at the models there too.
Great, thank you. And Ramana, I think you maybe took a slightly different approach to the controlling aspect of AI agents?
Yeah. For us, obviously, being in the travel business, the whole data reliability is an extremely important concern. So the way we approach, we wanted to make sure we have the right validation and observability layers around the data, number one. Number two, every data signal we track, we just want to make sure as we process that, we make it more trustworthy, and like it's a trusted data asset that we can feed into any model, for the use. It's not just like the reliability for us is like obviously system reliability and APIs reliability, MCP servers reliability is like pretty like standard, and that's a given. It's a lot more about the data reliability, data trustworthiness, because we do have a strategy to put the whole AI, various flavors of AI at the center of our innovation curve for the next several years. So we are taking an approach of treat every data signal and make sure you make it trustworthy and have all the right validations around it. Right, that's one. Number two, I think Ellen briefly mentioned about this. As you use this data into various models, you want to make sure you don't leak the wrong data and then create bigger concerns. So So that's the whole data kind of cuts across even the governance aspect. So we are actually developing the capabilities to make sure that's all like fully automated, and then we catch all of this like data errors and error bots like much more sooner before they enter into
That's great. And actually, on that topic of data confidentiality and privacy and so forth, Niels, maybe you can talk a little bit about the, that safety layer from a data privacy perspective that you bring.
Yeah, for sure. Because I fully agree with my panelists here in terms of the technological foundation, the models, but also the data that needs to be trustworthy, basically, right? And trust is, I think, a concept that begins very early in designing even of what type of agent are we actually gonna develop. Maybe some of the people in the audience were in the AI development workshop that we did just a few hours ago, where it's very important to sit down with businesses, because AI is actually always supporting business. I think that's really, it's all about tech, it's all about supporting business. Which processes need support from AI agents, which could benefit. So in the design process and the consensus of what we're actually going to create together in the organization, I think that's the first start point to create that trust. Reliability in terms of data, in terms of the output of the algorithms, of course, is very important here. But then, of course, it's when the agents are actually working, it's a cyclic process. You also talked about it. It's not a one-time thing, looking at how well your agents are performing. It's a cyclic process where you keep monitoring how the agents are performing. At the moment that you see deviations from the original design, I think that's a point that you should also act. What are we going to do to bring the agent back up to par? It's about value creation. The moment the value starts to drop because the agent makes more errors or false positives or whatever, that's the moment that you need to redesign, I would say, so to keep the trust high. Because in the end, there's a lot of machine-human interaction where we start to rely on the output of the machine. And I come from a background of organizational psychology and looking at a lot of trust processes between people. But the same thing, I would say, goes for the machine-human interaction. How do we evaluate the output of the machine to begin with? Typically, we evaluate it lower because the perceived effort is lower. So agents really need to be up to par. The moment they start to err is the moment we lose trust in that agent really fast. You can see that all around when machines make errors. We attribute a lot of weight to that, even more than would be feasible for me. Let's say when a human makes the same mistake, we typically address it can happen. We don't allow that with the machine. So we need to establish this trust. It's about reliability in data, about the algorithms, but also making sure that it keeps aligned with the processes we're running. Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. I have one more question I'm going to ask the panel, but then we're going to open up for some questions. So please get ready with your questions. We'll be coming to you in just a moment. Ellen, one of the big topics on everyone's mind, and it's been mentioned many times already over the last couple of days, is the workforce, right? And what kind of impact are AI agents going to have on the workforce? How do we prepare the workforce for using agents in the right way? And I've noticed as a theme through what's been discussed here already in our panel, quite a lot of focus on actually giving the capability to colleagues to work with agents. So how are you taking that forwards yourselves?
Well, that is the key question, as you're saying, and you can imagine how much time I spent on actually enabling the workforce in order to get true business value out of the technology. We're 130,000 employees globally. We're operating close to more than 70 markets. It's a massive change journey in order to go into AI and even agentic AI in a positive way. And I think from a human perspective, going into things with fear doesn't release the focus and the innovation that you need. So we went into this in several dimensions. So we've done a lot of training around cybersecurity for all our colleagues, meaning store, warehouse colleagues, and office colleagues. So tailoring that type of information so people start to get more familiar with the risks of it, but also how to deal with that. We've also had what we call an AI Academy. So given the possibilities for our colleagues to lean in and upskill and be curious, but we provide the tools and the opportunities. And then we also have something that we call Tech Academy, which is how we need to continuously upskill our tech colleagues so we can really drive both the foundational elements of the tech landscape being composable, but it's a lot to do with orchestration and integration. We need to learn new skills, and then we also need to upskill in specific AI areas. But my feeling right now is that because we've made these efforts, I see a tendency and then much more curiosity and leaning in to both the technology and the change, and that because I think the major shift is going to come when you get the pull from the business users, when they get and see the benefit of actually using the technology and what that can give them, not replace them. So we talk a lot about how AI can amplify our colleagues and really become the best version of who we are and what we need to excel at. So there is something happening right now. I feel that it's a bit of a positive movement.
I think that's really encouraging. You know, people tend to trust what they understand. So if you can give them those tools, give them that training, help them to understand and feel more comfortable, they're much more likely to then embrace the technology and also to know how to use it without making mistakes and going wrong.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, we do have time for a couple of questions. I see a hand down here near the front. We have some roving mics. One over there. Okay. Let's start over there and we'll come down here. Yeah,
hello, thank you panelists here for such insightful topics and sharing your personal company experience here. My name is Andy. I'm building agentic products for critical infrastructure, and I will second the Raman approach to curating data to guarantee accuracy and the result. But Ramana, I hear the first time in agentic talks word accountability that you mentioned, yeah? And I would like to elaborate how AI agents can be accountable for anything ever, and if they can, how we can enforce if they do something not right. Yes.
No, that's a great question. Thank you for bringing it up. I would say, especially in travel context, as I said, as we delegate an agent to work on behalf of us, we want to make sure the agent understands the context and autonomous to the extent it can, and also being accountable. When I say accountable, we want to make sure the end result that it produces with all the training data sets. The human in the loop can actually make sense of it, and then as the human gives and reacts to the output, the model can adjust to, and I would say it's as you progress along the journey, the model is more and more accountable. I'll give you one example quickly. Let's say I delegate my whole travel booking to the agent. The agent should be smart enough to know should I cancel? Should I rebook the flight? Should I ask for the refund? Any of those actions have really serious impact on the trip. So I think training the agents to be more, while autonomous, more accountable with the signals is absolutely paramount in our case.
Brilliant, thank you. I think we've got time for one more question. There's one over there. If you can tell us who you are, where you're from, and a brief question.
Yes, hi, hello. I would like to address the question to Ramana, because I'm working in the rental industry for the economy bookings. We are renting the cars. And you mentioned that you have implemented the booking process through the ChatGPT. And I'm curious to ask regarding the data, because we have the dynamic data and we pull the data from the suppliers as you are. How you build that process? Because we can't guarantee the car model, we do not know it. and we are missing a lot of data about the car, especially when the customer wants to rent it. Maybe if you could share a bit more details.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So we actually, that's a great question. We went live with our flight path and our hotel path. We haven't done that yet with cars. But the way we addressed it, the same problem even in flights. We built an MCP infrastructure to make sure we have all the nuances and complexities within that MCP layer. And any issues that you have with behind the scenes, they are not exposed to the end customer. Obviously, we need to understand both the data reliability and the dynamic nature of it. It's probably slightly different ways to treat all of these different paths. But for us, we fronted all of that with MCP before it goes and talks to the ChatGPT agent.
Great. Thank you very much. We are out of time. Please join me in thanking our panelists.